Hi, I'm Barry Clark. Welcome to the Mortgage and Property Podcast, brought to you by Mortgage Monster. Now sit back, relax and get ready for top tips, tricks and advice to help you with all of your mortgage and property needs. So hello and welcome back to the Mortgage and Property Podcast. I hope you're well. Today I'm joined by Tom Neal. He's a local letting agent. In fact, from our new office, we can actually see his office just over the road.
I've come a long way today.
Exactly. That's 7 steps.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Tom, as I say, works for Amos Estates and he's in charge of lettings and runs the whole letting division over there.
Yeah.
Lettings and management. So Tom, first of all, just tell us a bit about yourself.
A bit about myself. I've been in property for about 10 years now. Been with Amos for 8 years of that. Running our lettings and property management department. So it's keeping me busy. So
it's big over there. How many properties do you manage roughly?
We've got about 350 properties on our portfolio, and we look after quite a few sort of let only clients as well. So we've got quite a lot of business. Been in the game for 50 years now, so we've built up quite a big portfolio over that time. Yeah. So yeah,
50 years, guys, that's a really long time. That's a long time for any estate agents. It's a properly long time.
Yeah, that is. There's not many local agents who've been around for that long. So quite proud of that. So.
Oh, very great. Fantastic. All right, so start with just a couple of easy ones just to kind of ease you in. What is a lettings agent and what does your job entail? What do you do?
I think we do quite a lot, really, is the main thing. So it starts with marketing to find a tenant for you. Doing all of the legal paperwork and the setup is probably the most important bit. So just finding a tenant marketing your property is probably the very first stage of it, and probably one of the easier stages. It's what happens after that is the important bit of being a letting agent, to make sure that all your legal compliance is set up, everything's done properly. That's where we come in, really, and you've just got to be on the ball with that. You've got to know your stuff, and you've got to be able to do that properly to set the foundations right, and then after that everything follows smoothly. That's the plan.
Cool. So you basically work kind of between landlord and someone who's looking to rent, basically.
Yeah, sort of that middle person between your landlord and tenant, to really sort of work to ensure that that's a smooth process for all parties, really.
Okay. And why would you say that you need a lettings agent in the first place? I mean,
yeah, obviously a lot of landlords do it themselves, don't they? You can put an advert in a shop window, or you can go on Facebook and say, I've got a property coming available, who's interested? And I dare say a lot of people do that. I think having the lettings agent part of it just means that we are there, we do referencing, so we make sure that anyone looking to move into your property has good credit history, that their incomes are secure, they're at a certain amount, perhaps get references from previous landlords. Okay. So I think that is a really important part of it.
So you really kind of delve into the person looking to rent.
I think you need
checking they're a good candidate.
I think you need to, especially with the economy the way it is. If someone's job is a little bit sort of rocky, or income perhaps isn't quite there, you do need to sort of have those checks done just to try and reduce any risk, really. And then really the setup is the important bit, all of the legal compliance. And I think a lot of it has been changing in the last couple of years. We have to do so much legal compliance now. I think a lot of landlords possibly wouldn't even know existed. Yeah. And accidentally not complying by not being aware, because it's getting a very, very legal minefield kind of world now that we're in. Yeah. So I think that's our main role, is not just finding the tenant, it's the full referencing, it's all the legals as well, just to get you all set up properly.
So in terms of kind of the legal work and that sort of stuff, I know there's so much that goes into it, into the contracts and that sort of stuff. What is it that you think you'd be the biggest difference between someone coming from you and trying to manage it on their own in terms of legal? I mean, what's the best and what's the worst that could happen to, a landlord potentially?
Yeah, I think, if you've not set it up correctly, you've just moved somebody in, that could work out absolutely fine. Until there's a problem. Fingers crossed, until there's a problem. And I think that is the big bit. If you've got a problem with a tenant that isn't paying, and that could happen to anybody, especially in the world we're in now. If you encounter a problem and you need legal assistance to, recover that money or recover the property, that's the big difference. In order to serve notice now on a tenant asking them to leave, you have to prove to a court you have done all of these steps, and there is many, many of those steps, in order for a judge to even look at your paperwork. If you've not given something to the tenant on day one and had it signed for that you should have done, they're not gonna assist you, and then you're in real deep trouble, and that can cost you a lot of time and a lot of money. So, if it all runs smoothly and there's no issues, then fine. If you set it up and not perhaps done it the way it should be, then it might not cause you any immediate problems. It's not legally compliant, but it might not give you any problems until the end when you come to want your property back. And that might be that you've just decided tenancy's running smoothly, you've decided I want to sell the property now. You need to serve a Section 21 notice. But if you've not complied with all the bits and pieces at the beginning and throughout the tenancy, you're not going to be able to do that. And then you potentially can't get your property back without spending a lot of money and getting yourself in a bit of trouble.
Aggravation and time and effort. And
so I think it's really important just to do things properly now, definitely.
And all the contracts that you have, they all have to be kind of like legally looked at and all set up and that sort of stuff. If you had, I mean, you've had years and years of doing this. I mean, do you have to kind of keep doing iterations of those to make sure they're up to date? And
pretty much, yeah. So our assured short hold tenants agreements are the best you can get. They're government approved. Everything in them gives the landlord and the tenant the full protection that you need. They're not something that's sort of 10 years old that we've just been using over the time.
Copy and paste like.
I'm sure some people do out there, or some landlords might do out there. There's been a lot of changes recently, especially with the Coronavirus Act and that sort of thing. So our agreements that we use are the most up-to-date. They cover all the most up-to-date legislation. If something new comes out, our agreements have it. We get them sent through, and that's what we use for our clients. So,
and again, you mentioned there being kind of the intermediary bit between the person renting and the person being the person doing the renting, and the person then being the rentee, basically.
Yeah.
So I just want to kind of look at those two bits you do, because the two are very, very separate, and you kind of run between the two. So just run me through. So if I want to kind of rent, if I owned a property, a buy-to-let property, and I wanted to rent it out, like, what would the process be? Talk me through what we do from kind of start through to finish.
Yeah, start to finish. I mean, ultimately our job is to make that as smooth as possible for the client, for the landlord. So a lot of it is the back end stuff that we're running around doing. But essentially, if you said, I've got a property, I've just bought it, it's ready to go, we'd organise to meet with you at the property, come around, we'd take full photographs, professional photographs of the property. We do a professional floor plan, we measure all of the rooms, we get full details. If it's a detached property in a particular area where the surrounding location is quite unique or quite nice, we can use drones to get footage of the local area. Perhaps in Hadley, you've got area of the estuary, the castle, the mountain bike track, that kind of thing, just to give people a bit more of a perspective as to where your property is. Yeah, definitely, yeah. So we like to offer a full and thorough package, I call it. Some agents out there will just literally get a few photos on the mobile phone and that's it.
We have seen some of those photos.
yeah.
You know, especially if the difference I think between bad photos and good photos. I mean, if you say, I mean, you've probably taken stuff over that hasn't rented before, then you've kind of taken it over and put it on the higher market value with better photos. I mean, photos are key. They're the first.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. And it's advertising someone's property properly. You know, I think if you've got floor plan photos on their own, yes, give you an insight into a property, but a lot of people we feel want to see a floor plan. They want to see how rooms are arranged and how the sizes are and that kind of thing. And you know,
I 100% agree. I'm a floor plan person. If it's not got a floor plan, I'm like, I can't work it out.
You're blind, aren't you? So we come around, get all of those details. We then get your property on the market. The phone is then ringing. We get an email leads. We have our own database of applicants that are looking. So everyone is contacted. We work through those. We show people round. If we're then getting offers in, we put those over to the owner to say, you know, we've got this person interested, this is their situation.
Yeah.
Who do you want to go ahead with?
And then we just go back. So when you say you kind of put it out there, how do you do that? I know that everyone uses Rightmove. Is that kind of the main portal there?
I think so, yeah. I mean, the online websites are key in this day and age. So Rightmove is one of the bigger ones that we use. You've also got Zoopla on the market, our own social medias as well, our own Facebook and Instagram and Twitter feeds we post it out on. As well as our own internal database, it goes out to everybody.
Yeah.
So it's not difficult in finding people. It's just then whittling it down to who's interested, what's their situation, can we get them through referencing as well.
Who's the best kind of tenant that you feel for that?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's the aim of it. Then once you're happy with that situation, we then run those references to make sure that everything we've been told works out correctly, and then we're on to the legal bits and pieces. Tenancy agreements, legal paperwork, serving various documents to the tenant, getting them booked in. We organise a professional inventory for you. So just before the tenants are due to move in, we have the property all fully documented.
Yep.
That way, any problems at the end or during,
you can kind of refer back again. You go, that wasn't there, and you can kind of have a look at.
Yeah, they're really key to have.
And that's all independent. It's not someone that, because kind of it's at arm's length.
So we outsource that to a company. They're the experts in that particular field. So rather than us doing a bit of everything. We like to do our job really well. We'll outsource that job to someone that does that day in, day out. They're professionals in that. The reports we get are fantastic. And if there are ever any problems, we do tend to find at the end of a tenancy, if we're looking to make any deductions, with these reports that we've got, we have a really high success rate of getting the landlord some deposit money if we feel it's due, it's genuine, we feel like that is excessive above wear and tear. We don't normally have quite a high success rate with those reports.
Okay.
Good. Yeah.
So that is one thing that we heard from kind of people that are renting, is that whenever they move out, they kind of tend to get, money knocked and taken off them.
Yeah, they feel like they're getting stung a bit by the agent or the landlord. And we get that too sometimes, where people say, we feel that's unjustified. And what we try and do is show them photographs of before from this document, show them the after document, and try to get people to see there is clearly a difference.
Yeah.
Obviously, it can be subjective, because fair wear and tear is subjective. You might feel as the landlord that something's not acceptable. The tenant might feel that is acceptable, and maybe we'll agree with one or the other party or feel differently. So there is a mediation service. We register deposits with the tenancy deposit scheme.
Okay.
They are really designed to hold that money in a safe, secure manner. No one can run off with the money. It's all secure, and they offer a mediation service. So if there is a dispute going on between the landlord and tenant and we're unable to mediate that, we can then refer that on to a sort of government-backed scheme that will do that in a professional third-party sort of
independent type of way,
manner,
but just not.
Yeah, definitely. And generally, we do try and keep everybody happy, but in some instances, if you've got a clear disagreement going on, you can't keep everyone.
Someone's going to feel like they've lost them.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so I think that independent mediation service is a good thing to have. And so, we're normally quite successful with our claims, because we don't like to, claim for things that are a bit over the top. We tend to be very honest with our approach with it. And if we feel that perhaps a claim is a bit excessive, we would say that. Or if we feel like, actually, no, we think we've got a genuine case here, we are honest with that, and we say to the tenant, look, this is an excessive wear and tear. But we always try and have a fair approach with it.
Okay. Oh, that's cool. But okay, so what if I was starting to look for a property? Take you away from that now. What if I was starting to look for a property? How would I kind of start with you guys? What would be my process from start through to finish? Yeah,
so if you're looking to be a tenant, you're looking to find somewhere, give us a call. The best thing that we say is, on our website, you can register your details. You can register on there what you're looking for, where you're looking for it, your budgets, all that sort of thing. You can pop on our website. That then puts you on our database. Mm-hmm. When we take a new property on the market, we always post that out to our database first. Mm-hmm. So you're going to get ahead of Rightmove and the masses of it going everywhere. That just gives you a bit of a head start. That gives you opportunity that something's come on.
Getting there first.
You get in first. Yeah, it's been posted. You like it. You let us know. We'll give you a call. We just check through the details just to make sure that particular property is within affordability in terms of the referencing agency's eyes. If the referencing all looks fine, then we can get you booked in as soon as we can, show you the property, and if it's something that you like, then we can obviously put an offer forward to the landlord and proceed.
So in terms of a kind of rental affordability, is there kind of I know for mortgages we have a rental calculation.
Yeah.
Is there something similar for kind of rental?
There are ratios, yeah. So generally speaking, if you are looking to rent something for £1,000 a month, you need to have a combined household income of £30,000.
Okay.
So it's working on that ratio really. So if it's £2,000 a month, it's 60,000.
Okay.
That's a combined household income. So that could be that there's 2 or 3 adults all working and you're in excess of that. It could be one person's working, another one stays at home. The makeup doesn't really matter. That's the combined that we need.
Okay. And thing we get kind of is how much more difficult is it renting with pets and that sort of stuff? If we had 27 cats or a dog or whatever else it is,
it's difficult, isn't it? I think we've sort of researched these, and we found that actually the majority of households do have animals of some description, and not all landlords are comfortable with that, which is their decision. But if you have a blanket no pets policy, what you end up doing in reality is cutting out quite a large
really good
chunk of the market. In some cases, that could be 60-70% of your market. If you're looking to rent out a 3-bedroom family home, you could be cutting out 70% of the market that's looking by saying no pets, because most families do. If it's a 1-bedroom flat, it's less of a market you'd be cutting out.
Well, the other thing with flats as well is the fact that you have to, I suppose you're going to have to check the freehold and leasehold to make sure you can definitely, because there are actually some, we find when we're kind of selling properties, is the fact that there are some,
stipulations.
Leaseholders say you cannot have any pets within the building sometimes.
That's quite common. We find that quite a lot. These big purpose-built flats, 9 times out of 10, if not 10 times out of 10, there is a clause in there, whether you own the property and live in it or whether you're going to look to rent it, that will have a blanket no pets policy. That is in the lease, so even if the owner wanted to, they couldn't. If it was a house conversion where you've got several flats in a converted house, often you don't have that. So there's things that we could perhaps suggest. If you're looking for an apartment and you've got pets, we would potentially look to do if there's any house conversions that come up, we could perhaps point in that direction. But say if it's a bungalow or family home,
it wouldn't be uncommon basically to
and the rules and regs are changing on that now, whereby you need to have a valid reason to not accept animals. That could be a valid reason, as we've mentioned. It's in the lease that you can't. It could be that you've got some very expensive flooring gone down. It could be that you've got an allergy to pet hair and you're intending to come back. So if it's a valid reason, then that's going to be more accepted than just a blanket, no pets without any real reason for it.
Okay.
So we do try and have that conversation with landlords to kind of say, look, it's up to you, it's your property, it's your decision, but this is the negatives of it, this is the positives of it, and it give you that option really.
And so if, say, for example, I found a property I really, really like, houses, people will be very, not confident, but kind of expect maybe there would be some sort of negotiation when it comes to kind of buying a property. What about kind of letter briefs? Is something you really, really like? Is there, I know, first of all, how's the market at the moment? Is that common? And kind of, is that something that happens at the moment? Or is it just, it's crazy and there's not enough rentals? Like, talk me through what...
Do you mean in terms of people making offers on properties? At the moment, what we've probably found in the last few months is a real lack of supply of properties and a strong demand. That demand either being strong or increasing. It's probably a bit hard to gauge, but it has been strong for the last few months. So with the restricting market, what we've found is supply and demand, economics. You are finding that when you've got a lack of supply and high demand, prices are going upwards.
Do you find people that are kind of sometimes offer over and above what?
We have had that. Yeah, okay. We have had that. I do think in some situations it very much depends on the family rather than the monetary value. Okay. So if perhaps somebody offered £100 more a month, but their job was less secure, we found landlords are less affected by more money. It's been more of a safe and secure option. I think has been more what they've gone for.
Especially those rental voids. If there is difference of £50 a month, those rental voids of kind of 2 or 3 months, or maybe a tenant which has to move out or has got maybe previous, rented previously and left some of these previous properties in not very good condition or had troubles kind of moving out of late rents. That's going to be worth much more to a landlord than just
I think so.
The bit of money.
I think with the way the world's gone the last few years, I think landlords are wanting a bit more of a risk-free, safer bet. And we have had cases where there've been several offers, lovely family home, lots of people interested, and someone has offered £100 more, say, a month and secured the property, not just because of the extra value, but because their situation was also quite safe. So we have had a bit of that. And I think with the market, the sales market being so buoyant at the moment, prices being as high as they perhaps have ever really been, a lot of landlords have looked at that and thought, maybe now I'll cash in, maybe I'll sell my investment property or one of them or several of them, which has further caused that market to retract, I think. And also I think just some people perhaps deciding that with things going on and inflation, maybe now's not a good time to move. Mm-hmm. We were finding during lockdown that a lot of people were getting bigger properties because they needed that extra room for an office. Yeah. Or perhaps getting a smaller property because they've realised now that they don't need a 3-bedroom house. They're going to downsize to a 2-bedroom bungalow. And that movement of people kept the market going really well. Now we've found a little bit where people, perhaps with inflation and costs rising, they're feeling actually, well, now's perhaps not the best time to move.
To jump up something bigger and stay around for a bit. And
I'll perhaps stay where we are and wait this out a bit. So that has caused it to be a little bit slower. But having said that, we are really, really busy. We've got lots of properties, coming on the market. We're renting very, very quickly. We can always do with lots more. But I think that's just where we are at the moment, where people are perhaps selling rather than re-renting. Yeah. Which equally, for our business, it is equally sort of good for us too. But it's just I think it's been a strange couple of years, really, hasn't it? I think for everybody.
Well, just note down. Especially with COVID and that sort of stuff. And how did you find? What kind of did you find that there were many people that needed to kind of have a bit of a break from kind of paying that sort of stuff? How was that whole kind of? That was such an odd time.
It was an odd time, and I think nobody really knew what was going to happen in that March 2020. Nobody really knew what was in front of us.
But everyone's kind of joking around at first. And then kind of everything shut. It was like bang. It was just all came as quite a big.
it come quite hard, didn't it? I mean, we were working from home, so we didn't just shut the door and that was it. Tried to work from home, with all sorts of other things going on at home, but we tried to do that because we had to be there. We were managing quite a large portfolio and people still needed us.
Teams have been key workers, weren't you?
Yeah. And obviously some people, the people coming and going in terms of moving house in the very early days was just a no-go. You weren't able to move, and we did have a few people scheduled to move in before this all kicked off, and we had to negotiate around that and get them moved in. But it was a tricky time. We were expecting that there'd be lots of arrears and lots of problems, and generally speaking, it wasn't as bad as we thought. We only had a few cases of people that weren't able to pay, had problems with their work. We just kept the dialogue open. We just worked with the landlords, the tenants, and generally speaking, we just understood the situation. We set up payment plans, and I did find really that quite quickly after things opened up again, those payment plans were paid off.
Back to normal.
And people got back to normal, which was brilliant, really. But I think being a good agent, having good open dialogue with all parties and understanding the situation helped that. It's pointless saying, we need your rent tomorrow and that's the end of it, because if someone physically can't pay, they're not going to be able to. So you need to work around it, which we did. And we got through it quite well, actually. I was quite pleased with how that all panned out in the end.
Okay, that's cool, mate. All right, so let's go on saying a little bit more slightly different now. So in terms of like charges, how you make your money and that sort of stuff, I mean, if I was, the cost has to be paid by the person looking to rent the property or by the landlord. So talk me through kind of, I don't know, what those costs would be if I was going to rent or if I was going to rent my property out, or if I was going to rent from you, to take a bit from both sides. I mean, how does it all work? And
it used to be from both sides. So the government ruled that agents no longer are able to charge tenant fees.
Okay.
So we used to charge the tenant for their side of the administration. So we don't do that anymore. So for the tenant, all they would pay, if you wanted to take a property, you just pay a 1 week holding deposit of the rent, and that just comes off of the final moving money. So that basically is their commitment to secure the property.
Okay.
Comes off at the end. For the landlord, we charge in various ways. So if you just wanted us to market your property as what we call a let-only service, where we just market the property, find the tenant, set it up for you.
Get the contract, get them all signed and get them...
Literally set it all up for you. We would charge £600 plus VAT to do that. And then you've got your tenant, all your legal paperwork, and then we sort of then hand over to you for the daily management. Some people are quite experienced in doing that, been doing it for a long time, that's absolutely fine. If you was perhaps a first-time landlord, I would possibly suggest maybe we manage for the first year, see how we go, and then hand over to you after that if it's all going quite well. But generally speaking, I would say 80% of our business tends to be where we would then manage the property. So if we're then going to market your property, set up all the legals with your documentation, we would charge £450 plus VAT. That's a £540 all in. And then we charge a monthly management fee, which is a percentage of the rental income.
Okay.
As a flat rate, we would normally say that we charge 8% plus VAT, but we do have flexibility where if the rental amount is slightly higher, we can negotiate and come down on that, just to be competitive. And we do offer quite a lot. Our management service is very sort of thorough, it's very full. We offer the whole package. We've got some very experienced staff in our office. So we can really do a good job of management for people. And we've got a lot of clients that we've held for a very long time, and we have a lot of recommendations from those clients, which is why our business has grown to the point where it is now. So.
And the other side of that as well is kind of if stuff does go wrong and that sort of stuff. I mean, you've got people that can. I mean, I know that some of our friends have rented property for you or had a rental property for yourselves, and you actually got them a cheaper tradesman that they could find themselves.
Yeah, we've got some good relationships. A lot of our tradespeople we've used for literally 10 years, and we speak to them on a daily basis. I think you need that. You need that trust, you need that reliability, you need that relationship.
Someone's going to turn up.
Yeah, definitely. They're pretty much part of the team. They're a separate company being a tradesman, but we deal with them day in, day out. So often we can get cheaper prices. You've got that trust there than if you were just to ring somebody in the phone book that you don't necessarily know. They might quote you higher than what we can get, but because the volume that we can hand our client, our contractors, the volume we can give our contractors
means they'll look after you.
They look after us, look after our clients. We don't add any percentage on for us. So if there's a bill for £100, it is £100 from the contractor. We give the client a copy of that invoice, so it's clear. We don't add anything on. I know some agents will add a percentage on. Sometimes as much as up to 10% goes on top for the agent. We're not interested in doing that.
Just pass them directly on, job done.
We pay that invoice when the rent comes in and pass our landlord client the copy of that, so it's all transparent.
Okay. Okay, that's cool. All right, so this is a big question.
Go for it.
What's going to happen in the future? Like, what's going to happen over the next, say, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, do you think, in the rental market?
What's going to happen? I'd love to know, really. I would love to know. I don't think anyone really can answer that accurately, can they, really, without a crystal ball? I personally think that the way things are going, rents are rising. I think something is going to have to be done because it's going to get to a point where it's just going to be unaffordable. And if you look at the last 5 years, where rents were then and where they are now, that pattern can't continue for 5 years again, can it? It can't.
You say that, but people probably said that 25 years ago. Do you know what I mean? 30 years ago?
Yes, who knows, really?
Yeah.
What we've seen recently could be because of what's happened the last 2 or 3 years with landlords selling and sales prices being high and people selling. Will that market continue to restrict? Will demand continue to grow? Will that kind of gap get bigger? I don't know. I mean, property investment has been really the last 20 years a very good investment for landlords. And I think you've always got that need for rented property. You know, the days of sort of in the 50s and 60s of your council houses being built for council tenants, you don't have that anymore. So you do need to have that supply of rented property, don't you, as a means of people that don't want to buy or can't buy, having somewhere to rent. And it's now fallen on the private landlord to fill that gap where the council haven't been able to sort of continue that. So I think you're always going to have that. I think you're always going to have a high demand for tenants looking. I just hope that going forward, the supply is there from the private landlords in order to kind of keep up pace with the demand, really, because I think it's needed. You definitely need that private landlord element. I feel
like there's a void there, isn't there? That needs to be fit. There's not that stuff there, so it needs to. There's a massive void, isn't there? It needs to be filled.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you think at the moment, mate, that landlords are being taxed like too heavily? You're looking to see a lot of stuff. I mean, basically, landlords have just been squeezed from kind of every single direction, aren't they? And I know some renters might go, "Oh, poor landlords! Oh, they cried," and but landlords will be landlords to a point where it then doesn't make the money anymore. There has to be, landlords have put risk in, they put money in themselves, they've put in, at least from Walsh's point, at least a 25% deposit.
Yeah, it's a lot of money involved, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. The stamp duty is now ridiculous. To buy a property at like £200,000, you're going to need kind of 75, 80 grand's worth of income. Definitely, that might generate maybe £800 to £900 a month rental. Yeah. By the time you take out all of your costs, what we find with kind of buy to let, there's not
a heavily
it's 100 a couple of quid, isn't it?
Anymore, like it perhaps once was. And I think, as you said a second ago, there's a huge void that needs to be filled by private landlords because there's no one else filling that. The council aren't building lots and lots of properties to satisfy the demand that's out there. So there's a big void that you need private landlords to fill.
Yeah.
And as you've just said, over the last probably 5 years, the increased taxes, the increase of stamp duty, and the various other things going on,
like EPCs and licensing.
Licensing's a big one too. And obviously we know why it's being done.
Yeah.
Raising the standard of rental properties is really important, really key. The cost of some of these things and the tax element, I think, has caused some landlords that we've dealt with, and probably across the area, to decide that actually this isn't as profitable anymore as it perhaps was or should be.
Yeah.
And the tax element has probably squeezed
massive difference
some people to decide not to do that, and then that void we spoke about gets bigger because the market is contracting because people are offloading,
selling rather than
investing in more because it's not profitable to do so. They're offloading, and we don't want to see landlords getting richer and richer and richer where it's so cheap that instead of first time buyers being able to buy a property, you've got
they get outbid and bullied around and
buys their 20th property. And I totally get that, and I think you have got that levelling up that needs to be done that the government are trying to do, but nonetheless there is that void that needs to be filled. It's a very difficult subject, isn't it?
It's getting that balance right to try not to end up with kind of a Germanic type system whereby pretty much everybody rents compared to people owning. I think in the UK people have always liked to own their own properties, and there's been a massive history of that.
And I think in Europe, you say 75% of properties in Europe tend to be rented. I think in the UK, it's only been more recent times, probably in the last 10 years, that rentals have really been an option, because I think before that, 10, 15 years ago, everyone just thought you've got to buy a property, you've got to get on the property ladder, and rentals wasn't really a thing unless you really needed to. But more recently...
It's more affordable, I suppose, more affordable compared to what they are now, in line with like wages compared to what property prices were.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And more recently it's become more and more difficult. to purchase. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think sort of prices going up, whether you're looking to buy or rent, everything's going upwards, isn't it? Really. So it's going to be what works best for that individual, which way they go, really.
Mm-hmm. All right. So with kind of landlords being squeezed and that sort of stuff. I mean, talk me through kind of any future legislation you see coming in that may be kind of more of a problem for landlords potentially, or provide a benefit for tenants.
There's a few bits on the horizon as we speak at the moment. Obviously, bits have come in. At the minute, the first one is the 1st of October this year. Mm-hmm. It's the changes to the smoke alarm and carbon monoxide regulations.
Okay, what are those?
So what we're going to be checking is really that you've got smoke alarm on each floor. So if it's a house on each floor, they need to be in date. They have a time frame on them, so some are 5 years, some are 10 years.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't know that. I thought they were just you had one. It was
exactly. They do run out, so it's down to the tenant to change the battery if the battery runs out. But if the unit itself is due to expire, that's the landlord or us to double check that. The key thing as well with the carbon monoxide alarms is you used to have them. If you've got a solid fuel burning appliance, you needed to have one. So if you've got a log burner, you pop one there. Well, that's now going to open up to having a gas appliance. If you've got a boiler, you need to have that in that room when you've got a boiler. If you then got a log burner downstairs or in a separate room, you then need to have two. So it's just basically tightening up on that.
It's a safety element, which is not a terrible thing, is it? It's not
a terrible thing. It's all safety. It's reasonably inexpensive to do. We've had to comply with having smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms for the last few years anyway. This is just tightening up on that to make sure that you've got them in the relevant rooms and that they are all working and in good order. So we're going to be running out a program in the next couple of days, really, contacting everybody to say, this is coming in, this is what we're going to do. We're planning on inspecting all of our properties, checking dates of smoke alarms, checking that they're fully working as they should be, checking that carbon monoxide alarms are in place and where they should be too. And then we've got it all written down then of what's due, when they're going to expire. We know everything is all compliant. So everything's compliant now. It's when that regulation comes in October, we want to get ready for in good time.
So what happens then if, say, for example, with you guys, you make sure it's all in place and whatever else. So, heaven forbid, what happens if, say, for example, you didn't adhere to those regulations? If, say, for example, you didn't have a letting agent such as yourself and there was a problem in a property such as a fire, and heaven forbid, gosh, even a death or whatever else is, what's the... I mean, is that then manslaughter, or are you going to kind of potentially look at prison?
Yeah, I mean, you can get into some serious trouble. So the landlord is responsible for the tenant's safety.
Yeah.
And if you're a landlord that's done all these checks and, heaven forbid, there's an accident, there's a fire, but you can prove that, as the landlord, I've done all the bits I can reasonably do. It had smoke alarms, they're in date, they were working, then you can prove that, yes, it's an accident, you've done all that you can do. But if it was seen that you haven't even got smoke alarms, you've not checked them, batteries aren't working, you just haven't adhered to any of this.
There's no care for the client. There's no care for your tenant, is there? It's not.
Then you can be facing some hefty fines, charges, as you say. It could be neglect of your tenant, it could be a manslaughter charge, it could be anything, depending on what the situation is. But it is very, the consequences of not doing it correctly and not looking after your tenant's safety can be huge. So that's where a letting agent comes in, because these new rules and regs that come out aren't advertised.
No, I didn't know about that one. It's not.
Exactly, they're not widely advertised. If you're a landlord that just has a few properties and you're just sort of getting by and it's all going well, there is nowhere as such. There's a few sort of, things you can be a part of that might tell you that. But generally speaking, it's not on the news to say this is coming and you need to comply. So if you have a letting agent, we obviously are in the know of that. We know when things are coming in good time. We put plans in place to cover you. So often we cover landlords without even realising. They'll ring and say, this new legislation coming this week. What we're going to do, and we say, well, we've already covered you. We knew about this 2 or 3 months ago. We've already covered it. Don't worry, and they're really grateful for that. So we cover that. There's a few other bits coming in too. On the horizon, there's changes to Section 21 notices. That's been on the table for a little while. I think it got pushed aside a bit with the coronavirus thing coming in.
Section 21, is that when a landlord has to or needs to sell a property? Then there's...
It's basically the notice you serve asking your tenants to leave. It's a no-fault eviction notice. So it's not saying that you've breached the agreement in any way. It's just saying we, the landlord, would like to get the property back, giving you 2 months' notice of that. And that could be for a number of reasons. You don't need to give a reason. Often it is that they want their property back to sell or they need to move back in themselves. But it's a no-fault eviction. There's other notices that are, you've breached the agreement by not paying the rent or paying late that you'd serve. So that is going to be changed in a way that's going to go so that the landlord needs to give a valid reason.
A proper reason for kind of having to throw someone out, which is a bit unfair.
Most of the time there are proper reasons.
Yeah.
But this is going to be changed a bit. How that's going to look when it's actually sort of on the table. I don't think anybody quite knows at the moment, but that is on the cards, that's going to be chopped around a bit in terms of serving notice on the tenant.
To give the tenant just a bit more protection, basically, and that sort of stuff, and not being thrown out willy-nilly.
It's difficult because I think there's not many tenants that are probably asked to leave for no reason. There probably are reasons, it could be late payment or that there have been issues. But there are a lot of valid reasons as well, where you say landlords want the property back, they need to sell, they want to move back in, they want to do something with a family member in, and it's how the landlord it's got to be fair for both sides, isn't it?
Of course, yeah.
Of course you want the tenant to be protected, but also the landlord that if they do need their property back for a valid reason, that they can actually
at some point.
At some point, yeah, of course.
And what else is kind of coming in the future potentially after that?
I think they're the main ones. There's other bits and bobs that are being discussed, but probably too far away to really say at the moment. But I'll say they're the two imminent ones that are on the table. Yeah.
We heard a lot of chat as well about potentially, EPC certificates. Yes. The ratings of those haven't gone up quite considerably, but I think that's only at white paper stage at the moment potentially.
Yeah, a couple of years off. I think that's being discussed sort of 2025. It's going to say that in order to rent your property, you need to be an EPC band C or higher.
That's quite high, isn't it? I mean, like, bear in mind, new build's only kind of A or B. That's quite...
Yeah. And that's for any new lets. I think from 2028, it will be for all pre-existing tenancies, basically. So we've got a good few years to go, and that, as you say, is in discussion at the moment.
Yeah.
At the minute, you need to be an E or above. So anything that's below an E really probably is quite, costly to run, I would say. So that's probably fair. I think more of a tapered scheme might be a bit easier to say, we're a D now, let's go to the next banding, and then maybe in a few years later, then go banding above. But to jump straight from that to that, I think is quite a lot.
Yeah.
You can get government sort of funding for that, but you're expected to fund £10,000 per property first before you can look for exemptions or any potential funding that there might be. So if you're a landlord with 4, 5, 6 properties,
it can be quite costly,
and you're sat, a 70s house that's a D, you might have to spend 50 grand before you can actually get any exemptions or help.
So do you think potentially then that could even further restrict the supply, pushing rents up, means that it could be even harder for...
Realistically, yeah, I think so. There's not many landlords I know that would want to invest £50,000, for example, upgrading their properties in one hit. They might not have the money available for a start, but that's not money that you're going to get return necessarily back on.
The rental might not jump up with that. It's
exactly. And are you going to see landlords' costs going up, and then they want to pass it on to the tenants and say, right, I've had to spend £10,000 on this house, I need to recoup that, I want to increase the rent by £200 a month. Are you going to get that? Hopefully not.
Yeah.
I don't think you can justify that, but I think it's quite a steep jump. But we're a couple of years away from that, and just say it's being tabled at the moment. I think it will come in, and I think it's probably right to, in some respect, that you shouldn't be renting a property to a tenant that's going to have to spend a fortune on heating it because it's still single glazed, or the boiler's really old, or there's no insulation.
Yeah, you want to fair from both sides, and the government got a duty to look after.
Yeah, definitely. So I personally would say more of a tapered way of approaching that would be better than a big jump, but we'll see.
Okay, and you also mentioned before kind of licensing changes. I know that it varies hugely from area to area.
Indeed, yeah.
For example, we've got some tenants in Wales, for example. They have to go on like a landlord course.
Yeah.
They have to do for a day, and then they're all probably kind of pretty much registered in that area. I mean, licensing changes in this area. We're based down in Essex. What's coming in here, mate? What's changing?
It was something that was started probably about 7 or 8 years ago in sort of East London, sort of the Havering area. I think they trialled it, the government, to see how that would work, and it's obviously in their eyes worked quite well. So Southend last year brought this in.
I saw some of the properties down towards the seafront where people are being written to and that sort of stuff, and asked how many people are there and what's happening. And
that's it. I think in practice that's a good idea. It's designed to kind of whittle out the poor landlords,
like slum landlords type,
overcrowding. They've got a small property, they've overcrowded with too many people in poor conditions. So that is the idea of it. Southend Borough have adopted that. It's not for every single one of their wards. Just the ones that are deemed to be more of the poorer performing ones, we've sort of been told.
Problematic areas,
but that has covered quite a few wards. It's covered quite a large area of Southend. Castle Point, when I spoke to them, at the minute aren't planning on doing that.
Okay.
In the future, who knows? I feel with it, yes, it's a good idea. I do think, though, that given that we have to comply with the gas, electric, energy efficiency standards, that has whittled out a lot of the poor landlords anyway, or made them upgrade their properties. So this does seem, in principle, a good idea. but there's already a lot we're doing in the background. The cost of these things as well seems to be quite a lot of money.
So you do potentially find that when licensing changes, I know it's a bit of a thing to say, that ultimately, I mean, I know the government are responsible for kind of making sure that tenants are happy and that sort of stuff, but a lot of stuff coming in, if there's lots of increased costs, I mean, I don't know it's for sure, but I wouldn't have thought when landlords would go, oh no, don't worry, it's okay, we'll suffer that. Ultimately, the tenant, even though these are great ideas, the tenant, it does seem ends up paying for them because the rentals have gone.
And I think a lot of these that are coming under licensing are actually really good landlords, really good properties, really good tenancies, and they're being hit with it because, yes, in the area there's some poorer ones.
But they've been kind of wrapped up within that and kind of not.
I think so, yeah. I mean, it's about £650 for the licence. It lasts 5 years.
Okay.
You have to apply again, and it does get people on record. It does mean the council can check up, and if there's any problems or overcrowding, they can get involved, which I think is a good thing. Costs seem quite high. But I think something's needed again. It's just trying to get that happy medium, isn't it, really, where it's fair for all and protects both parties, really. So I dare say, there's probably problem landlords, there's problem tenants as well. It's not all one-sided, is it?
Well, with the licences, is there anything else needs to come in place? So you have to have like more fire safety and that sort of stuff in. But I mean, is there anything else? Or is it just literally a bit of paper that says, yes, you can rent it out?
You get a bit of paper that says, here's your licence, you can rent it out. In the background of that, the council are asking you to upload your EPC, your EICR electric certificate, your gas certificate. So they're wanting to check that to make sure it's all valid and you've got them as a starting point. I'm sure some people don't have them. So they're wanting to see that, see copies, make sure it's all compliant. They're asking what property you've got, how many bedrooms, what are the room measurements. So they're wanting to basically gauge how big is your property and how many people have you got living there.
Yeah, which is not overcrowded, basically.
Yeah, to avoid overcrowding. So in principle, it's a good idea. They're checking up on things.
Yeah. But make sure people aren't letting out broom cupboards and that sort of stuff,
Yeah, exactly. Or you've got a one-bed flat and you've got a family of 5 living in it. I'm sure you don't get too much of that, but I think it's probably going to, drag in a lot of the really good landlords with good properties that have always been upkept really well. It's probably going to drag them into it as well.
Yeah.
Which, people might grumble. But I do think, having said that, still, that obviously rental investments are, as you probably found as well, are very good investments still. Your capital value goes up so far, year on year, doesn't
touch
it?
Wood, touch MDF.
Wood. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Year on year, or certainly if you're looking at a 5 to 10 year plan, that if you buy a property today, in 5-10 years, it's going to be worth more than what it is today.
History, we've seen that with history. I mean,
absolutely.
I think the main reason why people do like buy-to-lets because it's physical. You can see it, touch it, feel it. It's not a gilt-edged bond. It's not, it's a people understand it. They've got their own property. This is my property, I own it. Rent it out for this much, just my income, and you can touch it and feel it.
And you can sell that at any point, hopefully for more than you paid for it. But in the 90s, when it was all stocks and shares, they weren't tangible. And if the market crashed, someone could ring you up and say, oh, well, you've lost a large chunk of your funds because the market's gone down. With property, yes, it can fluctuate, but you've got that sat there, and if you do want to sell it, it is a tangible item. So I do think, yes, the taxes and a lot of that has impacted landlords a bit, and it's been tightening all the time. But still, I do believe that, property investment and increasing portfolios is the way to go still. Mm-hmm. Hopefully you agree from also your side of things with the mortgages. I think that's still a very good investment. A lot of people are investing still, aren't they?
Yeah, we're doing quite a lot of kind of, we're still doing a lot of buy-to-let mortgages and that sort of stuff. And it's, I think people can just, as you say, they can touch it, feel it. It's tangible. That they can see it.
It's more of a
kind of
long-term
makes sense,
investment, isn't it? You might not get your rewards immediately on day one or year one, but that is an asset that is going to grow in value. You get your instant sort of income out of it, and also your capital value. So it's not a straight away you're going to be a millionaire overnight, but by just building a few properties up, I think it's still a very good way of investing, isn't it? So,
and do you tend to see, for example, I know you won't necessarily know this because you won't kind of be giving, landlord's tax advice and that sort of stuff, but you've seen kind of many more lets being done maybe in limited company names and that sort of stuff?
We found a little bit of that, yeah. Or people have sort of gone from being an individual and then they've said, I'm putting it into a company now. So I think people are doing that and exploring other ways. As you say, tax efficiency is key when things like this are happening. We obviously don't give that advice, but I think people are getting wise to that and changing the structure perhaps of how they do things. Yeah.
Okay, mate. Lastly, have you got any secrets or tips you can share with listeners to make sure they get the very best deal?
Very best deal in terms of a good sort of service.
But both sides. So if you were a landlord, or if you were, say for example, a tenant, how can they get the best from a letting agent?
I think recommendation is a really key factor there, because I think on paper a lot of letting agents can perhaps say the same things or offer the same things. Saying it is one thing and actually doing it is another.
Carrying it through is
a lot of the time people overpromise, underdeliver, and that's what I hate. So a lot of our business does come through recommendations, and I think if I had a property now and I was looking at renting it out and I didn't know who to choose, I would always choose a good local agent, something that's independent. I think some of the larger corporate companies, you have less of a personal touch. A lot of our clients have my mobile number. A lot of them ring me and say, I spoke to you 3 years ago, and I remember who they are, what their property was, and probably where they live, because my brain catalogues everything. So I think that's good. A good local independent agent, by recommendation, I think you can't go too wrong there. And that's what we live by, to be honest. So that'd be my advice. I think if it was a tenant, probably the same sort of thing. I think management service really differs across the board. I think you've got some really good letting agents that offer really good management service to their tenants, and some really, really poor ones. And if you've got a leaky tap or a problem with your boiler, you want a letting agent that you know is going to help you out and get that problem resolved. So if I was looking to rent, I would probably speak to friends and family that I knew were renting and find out who the good agents are that you perhaps want to go with, and get registered on their books. Perhaps avoid some agents that perhaps don't have such a good record at getting bits and pieces done maintenance wise. I think recommendation is key for everything, really. I think that's what gets your business our business. I think that's how we all survive really on that. And if you've got great recommendations like we do, and good customer base, then that's really key.
You mentioned about getting kind of all registered on your books and that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I know at the moment it's a really, really, really aggressive property market. Yeah. But I know, for example, that this our new office just here, literally just rented it. Just kind of just painted it. But basically, we saw of this through, actually, even though we know we work with you guys, from a statutory point of view, we actually saw this property first on social media because we registered with you guys. So we saw this kind of pretty much for everything else. Literally, I rang up, went, right, I need that. It's absolutely perfect. Exactly the thing what we're looking for. And it kind of barely hit even. So get registered.
Yeah, it was our social media. I think it was our Facebook that you saw it. And that's what we do. We ask people to register with us, and we get properties out on there first. So amosestates.com, pop your details on there. You can put in your criteria. We don't just send you everything and anything. You get bombarded with 1-bedroom flats and 5-bedroom houses. If you put your criteria in, as we're looking for a 3-bedroom house with a radius of Hadley 1 mile, this is my price parameters. It asks you to put a few personal bits in there. Who's it for? How long you're looking for this property? Do you need it immediately or in a couple of months? Once that's all stored on there, we literally just, as soon as something comes on, we had 5 properties come on the market yesterday. It just all went on our social media and our own sort of internal database. Everyone got emailed first, and then they'll go on Rightmove in a day or so. So it is really key to do that and get ahead of the game, definitely.
Fantastic, mate. Excellent.
All right.
Brilliant, mate. Tom, thank you very much for joining this week.
Yeah, no worries.
We really appreciate it. Thank you very much for all your information we've kind of gathered from you. So, guys, thank you very much for listening. We hope you found this episode really, really helpful. Please don't forget to follow, hit that notification button, and leave us a review, please. And we'll see you same time next week. Thank you very much. Cheers, Tom.
Thanks, mate.